It's good to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy. Back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew a version 1.0 decklist of the Commander in front of us on my quest out brew the magic world. You know the motto, baby. It's ABB, always be brewing. And this is what we're back to do today. The deck list is going to be down in the description for you below. As well as I'd really appreciate if you could interact with the video. Like, comment, subscribe, consider checking out the links down below. I'd appreciate it. But today, we're going to finish up and cover the other face commander of the starter kit. Today we're talking about Sephiroth, Planet's Heir. A 6-mana Dimir 4/4 human soldier avatar. With Vigilance says whenever Sephiroth comes in, all creatures our opponents control get -2/-2 till end of turn. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we can put a counter on Sephiroth. It's just a really fun text box. Giving our creatures -/- is something that's been a pretty popular effect. Obviously, we see something like Toxrill that's very popular in this space. I think the thing that's interesting about Sephiroth is that it's an ETB ability. So if we blink or copy Sephiroth, we can get like multiple copies of this effect, and that's really fun because Sephiroth is going to grow, right, when that happens. We also have a lot of other creatures that do a similar thing on ETB or destroy things on ETB and that kind of thing. So that's going to allow Sephiroth to continue to grow. As well as we can just pay off creatures dying to try to benefit things for us. But I want to say a quick thank you to the channel members. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. If you're interested in seeing all of our videos just a teeny bit early, check out that link down below. Well, we can either copy or blink Sephiroth, and I think there's a couple ways you can look at that. Obviously, I think copying makes the most sense, right? Because we want to have that original Sephiroth grow, right, when things die and get the counters. But I don't think we want to discount blink as a strategy, especially depending on how big our opponent's board are. So you have something like Spark Double just going to come in and straight copy Sephiroth's and come in with a counter on it. Deadeye Navigator is a great way to blink Sephiroth multiple times per turn, just needing to pay 1 in a blue to blink Sephiroth, and again, get that minus on the board. Auton Soldier is a really interesting one. So it comes in as a copy of a creature we control, any creature in the battlefield, except it isn't legendary, and it has Myriad. So this is really fun because it comes in as a copy of Sephiroth. We get the original -2/-2. But then every time it attacks, you're making 2 copies of Sephiroth checking the other players, basically affecting the board for -4/-4, and then growing all of these Sephiroths, right? And so Auton Soldier feels like one of the best options we have, as it's just going to become really tough for our opponents to deal with, considering we're going to be doing so much decay to the board. Arenicus lets us make a copy of it, except it isn't legendary. Thassa and Ghostly Flicker are just options we can use to blink Sephiroth. Same thing with Planar Incision and Conjurer's Closet. Conjurer's Closet, just like Thassa, lets us do it at the end of our turn if we want to. And then Blade of Selves is another really interesting option, just like Auton Soldier, where we can attach this to Sephiroth. Sephiroth attacks, you get the myriad copies, but they're legendary, so you have to immediately sacrifice them. But they're going to still get that -4/-4 off, just being a really nice way to affect our opponent's board and kind of hopefully keep them down just that little bit. But Sephiroth isn't the only way we can do this. We have creatures like the Marauders that when they come in, each player sacrifices a creature of their choice. Obviously, most of the time you're going to sack the Marauder, and everybody else is going to have a creature die. Growing Sephiroth, Caravat can give all other creatures -1/-1, being a potentially nice way to start killing those 1/1 bright tokens and start growing, bringing everything down. Pairs great with Maha that makes all of your opponent's creatures base toughness 1, allowing them all to die right there on the spot, becoming really difficult for them. Massacre Girl can be an interesting board wipe bomb when it comes in. Whenever it comes in, each other creature gets -1/-1. Whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1 till end of turn. Could be a very interesting way to just bomb a board, potentially take a board out, depending on how many creatures die. Massacre Worm, very similar to Sephiroth, right? -2/-2 whenever it enters to all opponent's creatures. But Massacre Worm adds the bonus that whenever a creature opponent controls dies, they lose 2 life. So this could be really nice, right? Getting some damage into our opponents. Plague Crafter, of course, very similar to the Marauders, right? Having everybody have to sack a creature or Planeswalker. Massacre just gives -2/-2 to all creatures, so there's just Sephiroth's ability on a spell. Same thing with Toxic Deluge. We actually get to choose how much the -X is by paying life, which can be really beneficial at the right time. Especially the bigger Sephiroth gets, the better, right, that Toxic Deluge can be. But Then once creatures start dying, we can benefit from it. Obviously, Sephiroth benefits from it, right? Getting the counters. But you have things like Drivnod, which can double all of our triggered abilities that happen on creatures dying. Massacre Girl says that if a creature an opponent controls dies, if its toughness was less than 1, you draw a card. So if it truly got -2 and got down to 0, we get to draw a card off it dying, which is pretty cool. Slaughter Specialist just gets to grow whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, so it's kind of becomes another threat alongside Sephiroth. We have the Sephiroth from the main set, the expensive one. Whenever it enters or attacks, we can sack a creature if we do a draw card. It says whenever another creature dies, target opponent loses a life and we gain a life, which is a classic Aristocrat's ability and a great one at it because anyone's creatures count, which is actually really big. And then if it goes off 4 times in a turn, we can flip it over into Sephiroth One-Winged Angel. That gives us an emblem with that ability, which is pretty nice, and then lets us sack creatures to draw cards whenever it attacks. Sephiroth, the mono black one's a very interesting one. We're going to cover Sephiroth next week on the channel, and I think that's going to be really an interesting deck to talk about as well. Sir Conrad's going to pay off creatures dying and leaving the battlefield. It says whenever a creature dies, a creature card's put in the graveyard from anywhere, or a creature card leaves our graveyard, we get to deal 1 damage to each opponent. So again, as these creatures die, right, we're going to be dealing damage to our opponents, which is a really nice ability to kind of stack on top. Vein Ripper says whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 2 and we gain 2. So it's 2 instead of 1 to everybody, but could be useful depending on who's at what life totals and who we're trying to focus down. Vincent Valentine says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, we put a number of counters on it equal to that creature's power. And then on the backside, it becomes a big trample life-linking creature that when it dies, just comes back in tapped on the front side. I really like Vincent. I think it's a really interesting card, and it's going to allow us to just soup up another creature, have another threat in our board besides Sephiroth, in case Sephiroth gets hated off the table, which is going to happen in certain matchups. The Massive Moon, when equipped to a creature, is going to double the triggered abilities of that creature. So this is, of course, great on Sephiroth because it means more counters. It's great on the mono black Sephiroth to have more life loss happen, and the Massive Moon has so many different choices of what it can go on to really benefit us. Black Market gets a charge counter whenever a creature dies, and we add a bunch of black mana at the start of our pre-combat main phase for each counter on it. Meat Hook Massacre comes in and can -6/-6 the board, but otherwise, whenever a creature we control dies, everybody loses 1. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, we gain 1. So we actually gain its life back as our opponent's creatures die. But I've said it before on the show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is my version 1.0 shot of Sephiroth. It might seem kind of short, but truthfully, we're just trying to nuke our opponent's boards and profit from it. And going into testing, I wanted to look at and just showcase a couple cards that represent what I might be looking for as we go into testing. Over on the right, you see Helm of the Host. That's just there as a way to say, can we make more copies of Sephiroth? Are there other ways to do it? Does that make the most sense? I think my gut tells me yes, rather than Blink. But Blink is also a fair option with something like Essence Flux. I think we want to grow Sephiroth, right, with the creatures dying. But I think Blink can be really effective because if you do it at instant speed, that -2/-2 can happen on an opponent's turn and hopefully be useful at the right time. And then we just have something like Black Sun Zenith. You put X -1/-1 counters on each creature and just put it back in your library. So again, this can hurt ourselves too. It's not just a -2/-2 that would go away at the end of turn. Those counters are going to stick around. But the really nice thing about BSZ is that anytime you have a counter, a +1/+1 and a -1/-1 counter to a creature, they're going to cancel out. So hopefully, Sephiroth's counters are going to cancel out, thankfully. But everything else might get hindered by Black Sun Zenith. But I think that'd be something you'd be willing to pay for, right, if it was going to be really effective. So there's just ideas of more ways that we can mass clear a board. Of course, other than this, we're also adding in single target removal, right? Single target destruction spells and things like that. It's not like we're just playing these minus effects. We're playing all that classic removal suite in black and blue to help us out as well. But let's do what we love to do on the show the most and get into our playtest. Remember, the goal of playtest on our channel is not to find magical Christmas land. It's not to show off our best plays, but it's to get in some game case scenarios and see what are the hands we're going to keep and what are we looking for. So here we're looking at a 3-lander. We see Vincent Valentine, so we got a nice creature to start with. We got Maha, we got Massacre Worm, and we got Preordain, which is a nice way to scry and then draw. So we have a way to dig. I think seeing 3 mana is something I would normally be a little bit hesitant on, having a 6-mana commander, but having a way to draw, especially being able to scry to and then draw, makes me a little bit happier because I know I can start digging for what I really want. Well, okay. There's another land, so this could be potentially really useful. Now we've got 4 mana total, right? So let's see what we have. We scry 2 and see Felwar Stone and Thassa. All right, well, Thassa's interesting, right? It's a way to blink Sephiroth. I don't know if we need Thassa, though. I think we're going to look pretty good here, especially going like Maha into Sephiroth, right? So I kind of like the idea of putting Thassa on the bottom and keeping Felwar Stone on top and drawing it, just so that way we can get access to it again. So there's another land in Minas Morgul Dark Fortress, so we can put a shadow counter on a creature. And a creature with shadow can block or be blocked only by creatures with shadow. So that could be really fun for Sephiroth, right? Effectively making it unblockable. So here... I was going to say, Minas Morgul comes in tapped. So this might be a little bit unfortunate. I really wanted to play Vincent this turn. But this is going to be kind of the awkward one. To play Sephiroth next turn, I kind of have to get this Minas Morgul in tapped. It's 4 mana to do it. Do I just do this and like read the bones? Scry 2 and draw 2, just continue to get ourselves into more things. We see the Slaughter Priest, we see Overkill. Okay, great pieces of removal. I don't mind that. More pieces for us to use. Maybe Vincent sees some that. I also just realized it can flip over when it attacks if you wanted to, but I think we want to keep it on the front side, right, to really benefit. And then I think we'd just go Tainted Owls into Sephiroth. Let's just say for the purposes of this that, 2 creatures die, so that's 2, and then, right, at least 2, but we'll say it's 4 for Vincent. Right? And now we're in good shape. We're going to start really being able to benefit on board here. Now we're up to 7 mana. Remember, it costs 4 in this to make Sephiroth unblockable. Massacre Worm could be a fun follow-up here, giving the whole -2/-2 to the board again. We could get Spark Double in as another copy of Sephiroth to give another -2/-2. Right, we've got some really great options. I like the idea of maybe trying to go Maha before one of them again, just to make all of our opponent's creatures a little easier to kill. So we could go something like Maha plus Slaughter Specialist if we want to. Right, there's so many options. I like Massacre Worm again. It's another nice creature that kicks our opponents while we're down. And we may even decide to Spark Double Massacre Worm instead of Sephiroth just for that extra life loss, right? That could be a better option to go with the Massacre Worm. But I think at this point, it's just going to come down to what our opponents have. Get swinging in with Sephiroth, right, and the Vincent attack, and then again, we come back to our next turn. Oh, man, Deadeye Navigator, so good. We're just like 1 mana off the Navigator being probably the best thing we could see here with the Massacre Worm, but I think I would just probably Spark Double the Massacre Worm, come in for another -2/-2, have it be 4 life whenever a creature dies, our opponent's control dies. And then we still got 3 mana. We could leave up Overkill, to take out a key creature. And I think we're just sitting pretty. It requires what our opponents have. Yes, these are ETB abilities, but that would be why the Deadeye Navigator is so important to just start reblinking something like Massacre Worm instead of Sephiroth. And that's what I like about Massacre Worm so much, is it's the better blink target because then Sephiroth can still grow. But of course, I think Valentine looks really good next to it. I think that looks pretty good for playtest number 1, so let's get into playtest number 2 here. Keeping a 5-lander again with Preordain and Pongify. So we're seeing some draw. We get to see Minas Morgul there again. Turn 1, we see Sephiroth, or Sakashima. So Sakashima can come in as a copy of any other creature, except its name is still Sakashima the Imposter. So it's a great way to copy. It's a great way to copy Sephiroth, right, and still keep a different name. So Preordain, I don't mind keeping the Isle and the Read the Bones there. Read the Bones is just going to help us dig deeper, right? So we do. I'm thinking that get the Minas Morgul in tapped while we can. There we see Conrad, right? So we're starting to kind of get our way into some nice more benefits when creatures die. I can Read the Bones, but I'm worried I'm going to end up having to pitch something. So I think I can just leave up the Pongify and kind of rock around to our next turn. Now with 4 mana, right, we really want to get to 6 for Sephiroth. I really hate to waste a turn. I guess the nice part is that we can have Sakashima come in as a copy of somebody else's creature. The only bad thing I hate about Read the Bones is we're just end up having to pitch a card, but I mean, we can, just pitch a land, right? So I like both of those. I honestly don't mind them. I don't mind the Victimize. Well, the Victimize doesn't make as much sense at this point. So we can throw that on bottom, draw another card, and I guess just pitch a land, right? And then this turn, I think we just get Conrad down, right, into a turn 6, which is a little bit late. But I think it's all right. Into Sephiroth, maybe get a couple counters on Sephiroth, ping some damage out. And then now Blade of Selves is a full 6 mana to get down and get access to, but again, would be really beneficial for Sephiroth. We do have the Irenicus, we do have the Sakashima. So my thought is like something like Demir Signet, and then just get the Irenicus or Sakashima down as a copy of Sephiroth, right? Get some more -2/- out, get some more death out, and then I guess probably this turn I'd follow up with the Blade of Selves on Sephiroth again. That would lead to -4/-4 because of the myriad, right? Pushing our strength here, hopefully, in attacking. If somebody removes Sephiroth, the thing I kind of like about this board is we have the Valentine to back it up. We've got Sakashima. We also have a token copy of Sephiroth now, so we can now freely copy this one and not have to worry about it. But I mean, now Sakashima could come in as a copy of this, reattach, and we'd still have all that original value. I know it's kind of another short playtest, but I think when you're playing a deck like this deck, I think so much of it comes down to how did I have a 6? So much of it comes down to what your opponents have. It's going to determine how we determine how successful we are. Into a token deck, I think Sephiroth's going to be really, really easy to get really big and become a threat. But I think Sephiroth's going to have a true test against those mid-rangey type boards where -2/-2 isn't always going to be enough, and maybe we can find a way to make that happen. But here we're keeping a 4-lander with Demir Signet, so we're just 1 mana off of Sephiroth. We've got the boots to protect it. We've got Blade of Selves. I really like this hand. Truthfully, we're just going to work our way up towards Sephiroth. I think we just play the Demir Signet here. Turn 4, I really like getting... I thought it's just kind of like boots plus Blade of Selves. I mean, we could do the Sign in Blood, but really don't need to yet. Now on turn 4 with 5 mana, now I'm kind of thinking of doing the Sign in Blood. Draw 2, lose 2. We could do the Marauder now, but it kind of doesn't make any sense, right? We have the Jest, just in case. This is a really interesting card, is making all creatures target player controls lose all abilities and become frogs. This, to me, can be used offensively with Sephiroth's ability, but this can be used at the right time just to shut a player down. Maybe they set up a good board and they're expecting something. You can just Jest to really take the wind out of their sails. But again, I think here we just run out Sephiroth, right? We get the -1 in, -2/-2 in. Maybe we pick up a counter or two here on turn 5. But, now we just look to get the Swift Boots on to protect it. I think I'd probably just get the Blades on. I've got 2 mana left. If I don't get the Boots on it, I just do this. I could leave up the Jest, right? But I think, to me, this just makes the most sense, because now you're getting -4/-4, having a chance for Sephiroth to grow. Only 2 mana left, which kind of stinks, but we keep ourselves in good shape. And having Hexproof is going to really help not get targeted down. Of course, still going to be susceptible to board wipe protection, but, maybe someone's not going to be willing to spend a board wipe just for Sephiroth, right? There's going to be other options there. And then as we come back to our turn, now you've got things like Toxic Deluge that can be a nice one-sided board wipe this turn. Madness can just give that flat -2/-2. We could Flesh Bag to get rid of a key creature. We could put Thassa down if we want to blink Sephiroth. I don't really see a reason why we would, but it's there if we wanted to go more up that route. I think, truthfully, just myriading Sephiroth now is going to be really brutal for our opponents to try to deal with. And we can now just hold up interaction like the Jest. We now have things like Toxic Deluge and Madness. If they do take Sephiroth off the board, we can still just mass potentially take care of the board, right? And then try to get Sephiroth back in to continue to pull some more value out of the board. I know they were quick playtests, but I think In a deck like this that cares so much about what our opponents have and what they're doing, I think it's hard to truly fully playtest without that knowledge. But I think Sephiroth's going to be a ton of fun. I already know that one member of my playgroup is looking at Sephiroth, and I kind of understand why. I know exactly what decks he wants to use this against, and there are plenty of my decks that want no part of this deck, or would be very difficult. So I look forward to those interactions when they happen. I would love to know what you think of Sephiroth, and I will catch you all in the next one.